Welcome back or welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Lucini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. This platform allows me to discuss and explain the strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode number 47. My guest is Matt Hasselbeck. Matt played 18 seasons at quarterback in the National Football League. He was a three-time Pro Bowler who threw for over 35,000 yards in his career, finishing 22nd all-time. With 11 postseason starts, 16th all-time in NFL history, he still holds many Seattle Seahawks franchise records. In 2021, the Seahawks inducted him into their Ring of Honor. Now, Matt is an analyst for ESPN, appearing on its signature Sunday morning pregame show, Sunday NFL Countdown. Over the past couple of years, I've come to see how Matt pours his energy into his priorities, loves his family and his craft, and why he has one of the greatest reputations in professional sports. I'm thrilled for the opportunity to learn more about his story and his philosophy on high performance. So without further ado, Matt, thanks for making the time.
So what's up, Mark? Episode 47, and I think I'm 47 years old. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of episodes. I'm like, wait a sec, that's a lot of years too. Shoot.
Well, I'll tell you, I was waiting. I was just making sure the timing was right to make sure this lined up perfectly.
It's like next level. Like some podcasts, they're just like normal. Like they just do what everyone else does. You're next level. That's like that deeper dive. Impressive.
I gotta find a 48-year-old next.
I can't wait for episode 99 to be like, some World War II vet, I can't wait. I'm excited.
So what I loved about your story preparing for this, Matt, is that, every accolade, achievement, what resonated with me is like fight and mentality that you clearly had throughout your career. Not a first-round draft pick, not a starter right away. So I really want to know where that comes from. Maybe it's an early life thing, but who were kind of the role models that instilled that kind of fight and mentality in you?
Well, the easy answer would be my dad. My dad played in the NFL for 9 years. He was a tight end. He played at Colorado. He was a two-sport athlete in high school. Probably would have been a two-sport athlete in college if they let him. But like growing up, what he instilled in us was like, hey, get outside and play, compete, get after it. And always challenging us, more so like in a fun way, not like a serious way. But it was like, I don't know, like we would pretend to be tight ends like our dad. So like he'd play quarterback and we'd run routes, and I'd be the tight end and my brother'd cover me and then I'd cover him and he'd run routes. When I was growing up, I wanted to be Mark Bavaro, Lawrence Taylor, Marcus Allen, like guys that he was teammates with who got to do cool stuff. That's just what I thought was normal. Like people would ask me, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, what do you want your job to be? And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, well, pick something. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'll just play in the NFL like my dad. Like, I don't know. I guess that's what I'll do. Like, and play in the NFL like my friends' dads, I just thought that was kind of normal. And then, so I think that's kind of where it started. Like, I just figured I would be an NFL football player. And if I wasn't going to be an NFL football player, no sweat. I was going to be Roger Clemens, or I was going to be Ray Bork, or I was going to be Larry Bird. Like, quite honestly, I wanted to be Larry Bird. That was my guy. But there weren't any basketball coaches that really thought that either. And I was 6'4", not 6'9". So all of a sudden I'm short. No, but I think from an early age, like all I wanted to do was play a sport and catch a touchdown pass and shoot a game winner and, strike out the side, all that kind of stuff.
I'll say this: my dad makes the joke. We're diehard New York Giants fans. He's been my mom's father has been season ticket holder since they played at the Yale Bowl, so it just goes way back. And my dad says that I'm named after Mark Bavaro. My mom says the Apostle, but my dad says Mark Bavaro. So it's a cut.
I saw Mark Bavaro yesterday. Actually, I was at my son's lacrosse game, and we played St. John's Prep, and it's up in Danvers, Mass, where Mark Bavaro's from. And when Bill Parcells, he did this famous thing, as a coach. When Bill Parcells was the coach of the Giants, he drafted Mark Bavaro out of Notre Dame, Boston kid. He was like, shoot, who's a veteran player I'm going to put in the room with him? And so he had coached my dad on the Patriots when my dad was on the Patriots and Parcells was coaching the Patriots. And he's like, oh, I'm going to bring this guy up that lives in Boston. It'll be like a nice little mentor kind of situation. And they were like best friends, like best friends. Here's my dad at the end of his career, who knows how old, 30 something, with 3 kids, Mark Bavaro, single guy, just out of Notre Dame. And, sleep over the house. Like, I just thought it was normal. Like, I'm in 5th grade and, I wake up, it's time for pancakes on a Saturday and, Mark Bavaro's there too. So it was cool to see him yesterday. Kind of a tangent, but like, things that I guess I think are normal, maybe aren't super normal, I guess is kind of what I would say.
Yeah, I think that resonates in your last 2 answers. This kind of normal environment. When I do speak to coaches, it is about setting up the environment that leads to the success on the field. And I'm sure we'll get into making sure that practice is just like that. The idea that comes to mind is this John Wooden quote when he's asked who's going to win March Madness. He says, the team that plays the closest to the way that they practice. He doesn't say an answer, but that's the way he said it. It's a good way of looking at it.
I love that. I love that. That's really good. Wow.
So here's my next question for you, because you talked about competing with your brother growing up. In psychology, there's this guy named John Piaget who says that we live inside of a game, and in order to win that game, we have to both compete and cooperate. And that's clearly in your story, right? Your ability to cooperate, build relationships with coaches, teammates, probably everyone you came across in the league, but also have that competitive fire. So could you talk a little bit about that for you? Where did you get that cooperation side would probably be the next question inside of it.
I had to work hard at that. I was good at the competing part. It was very natural. Like, I competed at everything, almost to the point where like people would make jokes about it. Like, not even almost, like everybody, like my brothers would tell you, my mom would tell you, my neighborhood would tell you, like, oh, he's inventing the rules as he goes. Like, he's like unwilling to lose. Like, all right, we're going to play till it's dark or until your team's finally in the lead. Like, there's that part of me probably, I don't know. That was just like a natural thing. The part that wasn't as natural was probably humbling myself to the level of just getting coached, understanding that like the truth about who I think I am as a player isn't really the truth about who I am as a player. And I think I didn't really fully get that till I went to college. I went to college and I thought like one of the guys I loved watching growing up was John Elway. So like I just tried to play like John Elway, did everything like John Elway. Like even like John Elway would do this thing where he would like stick out his tongue when he would throw the football, kind of like a Michael Jordan type thing. And I used to like in my 11-year-old brain was like, oh, well, shoot, maybe that's why he can throw the ball so hard and so far. Like, I'm going to stick out my tongue, when I throw the ball. And like, didn't want to wear a mouthpiece because it was harder to do. He didn't wear a mouthpiece, like all this kind of stupid stuff. But when I get to college, I had coaches, many coaches, really good coaches. Like my first coach was Tom Coughlin. But all my coaches, they were like trying to fix my technique or tweak my throwing motion or help me be more efficient. And I was in my head like, well, John Elway doesn't do that. So like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to be coachable. And I was talented, but I wasn't talented enough to not be coachable, like nowhere near it. And so I found myself at the bottom of the depth chart for a long time. Like, in fact, I can't remember if it was my freshman year or my sophomore year, but I remember we had our quarterback meeting in the offensive staff room and there's a depth chart in there. And it was like, first string, second string, third string, a space, and then me. And then I was like, well, why is there a space? Like there's only this amount of quarterbacks and I'm like more than that on the depth chart. I think we had 4 quarterbacks and I was like 6th string, if that even makes sense. And so I said to one of the offensive assistant coaches, I was like, hey, what's that about? And he shouldn't have told me this, but he was like, oh yeah, I heard them talking about this in the meeting. Yeah, they said if everyone got hurt, they would get a guy on defense to come over and play quarterback before they'd put you in. I was like, wow. Oh, but so it was hurt. It hurt big time. And I was angry about it. And there was no transfer portal. Like I couldn't do anything about it. But what I needed to do is basically have like an honest assessment of who I really was as a player in their eyes. And I think what I realized eventually, it took me a while, I wasn't super coachable. And I think that's the thing about like some of the best quarterbacks that I know, when you talk to their coaches, like if you talk to Clyde Christensen, the quarterback's coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, He was Tom Brady's coach. Before that, he was Andrew Luck's coach. Before that, he was Peyton Manning's coach. Hey, what's it like coaching Tom Brady? Tell me about him. He's the most coachable guy. He's got the best attitude. He's the hardest worker. He's got a humility, like he's got this beginner's mindset where he's literally taking it all in, and he's being coached. He's allowing himself to be critiqued and coached. And he's like, it's funny, like we have young guys in the room who are less coachable than Tom Brady in his 40s. And I think that's something I did really improve on. I really improved on this, but it was a struggle early on for me, definitely.
I will say this, like right from the start, a new definition of humility that I came across that I'm absolutely obsessed with is what I do not know is more important than what I do know. And one of the things that I learned from my mentor in sports psychology, Dr. Christina Versari, she was working with the NBA. She says, this work that we're going to be doing together, you're going to start attaining some of your goals at a very high summit. And thing that she pushes to me most is never forget where you came from. Never forget where you came from. And it's like almost like this repeated message, like, hey, got it, I got it, I got it. But you can't hear that enough, right? Because if you lose that mentality of learning, then you're going to be in trouble. Another idea would be emulate until you can innovate, right? So you do the sticking the tongue out and learning from the greats. You know, Patrick Mahomes, he's learning and learning and learning and learning. And then, he's throwing sidearm on the run or finding different ways to throw it. And that's that innovation. But people try to do that too early. I guess that would dovetail right into your the start of your career, learning underneath a Brett Favre, or maybe you want to take it somewhere else. Who did you learn from really early on that you studied?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot there, and I wish I wrote all that down. I'll go back and listen to this and write some of that down. But I think for me, like, there's a lot there. Like, so first of all, not forgetting who you were, right? Or not forgetting where you came from or what got you where you are. I was not invited to the NFL Combine. My team didn't play in a bowl game. I actually got uninvited to the Combine. Like, I literally got an itinerary and never got a plane ticket. I called them and they were like, oh yeah, because sometimes that happens if a junior comes out early. I'm like, oh, well, only one junior came out early this year, was Ryan Leaf. And, and they're like, well, congratulations. Now you know who bumped you. And so for years, I didn't like Ryan Leaf. Now I know Ryan Leaf and I love Ryan Leaf, but like, he was like part of my motivation. Like, shoot. So I didn't get invited to the Combine. No sweat. My agent's like, hey, have a pro day. We'll invite all the teams. No problem. I'm like, oh, great. Yeah, good, no problem. I invite all the teams, 32 teams. One team shows up. One guy, the quarterback's coach for the Green Bay Packers, shows up. This guy named Andy Reid. Okay. So like, I guess he was the perfect guy to show up. He shows up. It's a blizzard in Boston. Boston College didn't have an indoor facility at the time. So he's like, all right, you want to go outside and throw? And I'm like, yeah, coach, let's go. He's like, I'm not going outside to throw in that. I just needed to know that you would have been willing to throw outside in that snow because I coach in Green Bay. And it was like, huh? So then we got on like the whiteboard. We might have gone outside for a little while because I was like, coach, I wasn't in a bowl game. I trained for this. Can we please go outside? But anyway, I get drafted by the Green Bay Packers and I'm shocked. And I remember Andy called me into his office before our first meeting. And he was like, listen, there's a lot that you can learn here. We're coming off of our second consecutive Super Bowl. Brett Favre's the 3-time NFL MVP. He's never read a leadership book, but his leadership style is incredible. I want you to study that. I want you to study how he talks to his teammates in the huddle. I want you to recognize how he knows the name of every person in the building. I want you to see and notice and study how he intimidates the opponent without even saying a word. However, I don't want you to copy his fundamentals. I don't want you to throw sidearm. I don't want you to no look passes. I don't want you to throw from your knees. He goes, in fact, your fundamentals are better than his fundamentals, and your fundamentals need work. Okay. So like, here's what I do want you to learn from him. Here's what you're not ready to do. And basically it was just like great advice. And so like, I was the guy at a young age, practice squad, 4th string guy. Brett Favre would be in the huddle with the Super Bowl guys, and they 11 guys in the huddle, and everyone else is supposed to be 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And I'd go up into the huddle. I'd be like the 12th man, a different 12th man. I'd get in the huddle and I would listen to what he would say. I would listen to how Brett Favre called trips right, zebra left, 2-jet X dagger, Y shell across, fake 40. Like he'd get in there. He wouldn't just say trips right, zebra left, 2-jet X dagger, Y shell across, fake 40. It's not what he would say. He'd get in there and he'd be like, all right, y'all, listen up. 7 steps. Give me time. Hey, Dorsey, good play fake here. Chewy, I need you on my check down. Hey, love of the game inside. Hey, we got X dagger here, okay? All right, trips right, zebra left, y'all. 2-jet X dagger, Y shell across. On 1-on-1, ready break. Hey, Dorsey, don't forget that fake 40, okay? And it was just like, it just sounded different. It just sounded different. And I think in my career, like when I eventually became the starter in Seattle, if I were to say, like, what's something that was different about you when you were the starting quarterback in Seattle for 10 years versus when you were the starting quarterback at Boston College? When I got in the huddle at Boston College, I was like a robot. I was like a sophomore. I'd be like, all right, guys, we got 2-jet X dagger, Y shell across, versus like getting in the huddle, like, hey, I own this. Like, this is my offense. Here we go. We got east right, eagle short, 3-jet X dagger. I'm like in it. I'm talking it. I'm living it. It's my language. And like everyone's with me. As I'm looking around in the huddle, I'm making eye contact. I'm like, hey, we got 2-jet X dagger, Y shell across, fake 40. Like, and it was just different. Like, and I don't know what, like, you don't find that in the playbook, but it was just such a great thing from Andy that all of a sudden my like desire to be like playground Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes, that wasn't really what was special about Brett. Like, it was one of the things special about Brett. It's one of the things special about Patrick Mahomes. Like, I sat down with Andy Reid this season, the season that Mahomes is MVP and they win the Super Bowl and he's Super Bowl MVP. And I said to Andy, I said, what's the best thing about Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback? And he was like, didn't even hesitate. He was like, he's smart. He's smart. He has the ability to own a game plan. We go do it for 7 days, 6 days, and then he just like evaporates it in his brain. And we hit the clear button and we go to a new game plan. And then we play that team again in 6 weeks. And he's able to like bring back that old game plan and know it in such a way and master it in that huddle for his guys and at the line of scrimmage. And it's like, yeah, like that's playing the game in the NFL. That's what being a quarterback is in the NFL. And so it's part of it. It's not like how far can you throw it? How sidearm can you throw it? It's like, that's just like an extra thing. So, those were some areas that I think like I really grew as a player. And I never would have imagined that. Didn't even know that was a thing. Didn't even know that I needed to grow there. But I just, I thought I was just a regurgitator of the play that was called.
I don't want to lose the trees for the forest in the beginning of your answer there. One of the things that stuck with me is the willing to go outside. So I want to talk about that for a second. I was having dinner last night with my 96-year-old grandfather. He retired as the vice president of American Express, but at one point he was selling 3M Scotch tape door to door, and he had 5 kids, and he was one of the first sellers of mutual funds. And he's telling this story. I go, Pop, last night, I go, tell the celery farm story. Tell the celery farm story. And the celery farm story is this thing where, when he was selling mutual funds, he put the kids to bed, and then he would go out late at night. And it had just rained that night, and he goes into this house, and he says to the wife, I'm here to meet so-and-so. And she says, oh, he's out on the farm. So he looks outside. It's all muddy. He's in a really nice outfit. And he decides to walk all the way through the mud, about an acre out there. And that guy was one of the guys that turned his entire career upside down in terms of willing to pay for the mutual funds. But what's the point? He was willing to get his nice suit, really muddy, going an acre out. And you were willing to do that for Andy Reid, willing to go outside. He didn't want you to go outside necessarily, wanted you to have the mentality that you go outside. The second thing, the studying. I mean, if you want to be wealthy, study wealth. You want to be happy, study happiness. I heard this story about Stephen Sondheim, one of the world's greatest music composers. And when he was asked how he creates such great music, he says, I listen. And I love that answer, because that was you, at Brett Favre's huddle, right? What I heard there was connection, rapport, tonality, everything that he was doing he wasn't just saying the play, he was connecting with them so that they felt it really viscerally. I want to ask you this question. I had it prepared, and I'm going to bring it in right now. Many people have dreams of playing at a high level or chasing that dream. but there's a hard time believing it and attaining it. So if there was a student athlete listening to this, right, of you finding your way to the professional level, I want to go from thought-provoking to action-provoking. What are some pieces of advice to someone listening that are tangible takeaways that from your story they can do right now to give themselves the best chance at attaining the highest mountain?
Well, I think one of the reasons, going back to like why I wanted to go out and throw in the snow, is because I had prepared for it. I was prepared. It wasn't like I just wanted to go out and throw in the snow. It wasn't like a fake toughness. It was almost like, no, you don't understand how hard I have worked since like the end of November for this moment. Like, you're not going anywhere. I'm going outside. I'm throwing. Like, we're throwing. I'm throwing whether you're going out there or not. I'm throwing. Like, because I had put the work in. Yeah. Like, it wasn't like, what's the saying? Like, it's better to be prepared and never get the opportunity than to get the opportunity and not be prepared. Like, I was prepared, and that's a lot where my confidence came from. But I think if you were to look at my college career and look back, I think one of the things that happened is like this idea of what it means to compete. And like, I was in really we didn't necessarily have great teams when I was at BC. We had a lot of coaching changes and a lot of issues, but like, we had really strong quarterback rooms. Like, we had really talented quarterbacks. Like, I was a kicking and clawing and scratching just to try to get to be the number 2 quarterback, never mind the starting quarterback. And I used to think of it when I was younger that I was competing against the guys in the room that I was with, like the guys next to me. And what I realized eventually is that that's kind of unhealthy to look at it that way. I'm not competing with them. Like, I'm not rooting against them. Like, I'm competing with myself. I'm trying to be better, the best version of me that I can be. So like, if I'm running sprints, like we used to run gassers all the time. It's across the field, back and forth 4 times. And like, I'm really good at gassers. Like, I'm like, I was like good at running, like cross country type running. You know, it's like, that was a thing for me I was good at. And some other guys are good at that too. And we'd run these gassers. And I used to just think like, I just need to be first. Like, I don't care how far in first I am, but I just need to be first. And I would just like, and you run in 3 groups. So like, you run like the big guys, the skill guys, and then like the middle guys. And I'd be running and I'd be looking and be like, all right, am I at first? Okay, I'm good. I'm at first. So like, I was competing, but I was really just competing with them. And like, that's not great. Like, to me, that wasn't healthy. I wasn't a good enough person to compete like that. Because now I'm not necessarily rooting for you. Okay. And then where it really switched for me, and there was a moment, there's things that happened and why it switched for me, but like, it switched for me where I wasn't competing with them. I was competing with me. And I was just trying to do the best with the God-given ability that I had. You know, this was a thing that whatever, like, God gave me the ability to be good at gassers. I wasn't good at pull-ups. You know, there's things I'm not good at. Power cleans, I don't have the school record for that, but I'm good at gassers. So it's where it flipped for me. It was like, whether I'm out there with all my teammates and all the coaches are watching and they're filming it, I shouldn't be running one way. Or if I'm out at my high school field in the middle of the summer, and like, there's literally no one out there but me, like, I should be competing with me, trying to do the best with my God-given ability, period. Not looking to my left or looking to my right, just doing the best that I can do. And that's where it really flipped. And I think it made me such a better leader. It made me such a better teammate, better quarterback, because I was authentically rooting for all my teammates after that, even the quarterbacks. And then when I got to the NFL, like, I jumped into that room with the Green Bay Packers, and there were other good quarterbacks in that quarterback room. And I mean, the backups were Doug Peterson and Rick Meyer from Notre Dame. And I think what was maybe attractive to the Packers and to Andy Reid and to Mike Holmgren and those guys about me is that even though I was competing for them, it's either like you get the job or you're out of football forever for the rest of your life. I was authentically rooting for them, cheering for them, helping them. And because I wasn't competing against them. I guess in a sense I'm competing with them, but I'm also like competing with anyone in the world that the scouts can go find to be better than all of us. So like, my mindset was that I'm just competing with me and just trying to be the best version of me. And in the process, I think what happened accidentally is a lot of those guys took me under their wing and helped me go from a pretty average college quarterback to a guy that's, taking his team to the Super Bowl someday. Like that transition wasn't just about, I got better at the 40-yard dash. It wasn't really about stuff like that.
I will say the preparation that you pointed to was not just physical, right? You had to cultivate that mindset of reps of being authentic. It really, you can't just snap to that. I think that's a really hard thing to do. I was speaking to one of the best, he's a good friend of mine and one of the best NFL scouts that I know. And I said, what do you know about Matt Hasselbeck? Right before I came on here. And he goes, oh, great story. Here you go. Ready? Traded for a first round pick in 2001, benched by the end of the year. In 2002, he's not the starter, comes in the fourth game of the season, leads his team to victory, never looked back, had a great career. He just snapped that off. I'm like, oh, amazing. What's the question, Matt? How'd you not lose faith and become such a great quarterback from there on out?
Scouts are amazing. That's impressive because I don't think I remembered all of that about myself. I did lose faith. I really did. It was tough. Dark times. I go to Seattle, I get traded there, just like you said, high expectations, gave up a lot, and the job's handed to me. I lose my job to Trent Dilfer, who was the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, won the Super Bowl the year before. And I was not a great teammate. Like, I really wasn't. Like, I kind of got in this moment of, there's a lot there, but basically Trent comes in to be my backup, just won the Super Bowl. And he comes in first day and he's like, hey, man, I'm your biggest fan. I'm here to be your biggest supporter. I want you to do well. I'm praying for you to do well, all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, right, dude. Like, you just won the Super Bowl. You're a first round pick. Like, you're a free agent. You looked around the NFL and you were like, who's the worst NFL quarterback right now? Like, whose job could I take? Like, who's the guy that after one bad game, the fans are going to be cheering for me? That's where I want to go. And he was right. I mean, really, he was right. And he's like, I thought I was competitive. Trent is like off the charts competitive. Like,
give me a story. How do you know that?
I mean, like, he's the kind of guy that, like, if we're out on like a date night or whatever, he'll compete with his wife so hard to the point where, like, I'm sitting there like, she might walk home. She's so angry. Like, he'll win it, like, I don't know, checkers, and be like, oh, the face, you picked that. It's like, dude, that's your wife. This is a date. Like, I don't know. He's just that's him. So we didn't jive. And honestly, like, when I went to Seattle, I went to slip back a little bit into like my not super coachable. Like, Mike Holmgren had a plan for me as a player. He walk before you can run, training wheels, and then I'll let you drive the car. And when I first got to Seattle, I was like, hey, man, we're running the Brett Favre offense, right? And he was like, no. And so he benched me. Like, I got hurt, but he also benched me. And Trent comes in and he just did stuff better. Like, he handled coaches yelling at him better. He handled the game plan better. He was more efficient in studying. I would say this, the guys loved him. Like, I was voted captain that year, but like, I doubt I was really voted captain that year. Like, it felt to me, this is what it felt like to me. It felt like we traded for you. We gave up the first round pick, whatever we did. So when the players vote for captain and the coaches get to count the votes, let's make him the captain. Like, that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like, to me, it didn't feel like it was my team. It felt like more like it was a little bit more like a Trent's team. And so I did get benched, and it was dark times, and I did lose faith a little bit, and it was a little bit of a roller coaster, and I did need to improve. And there were things I didn't know I needed to learn how to do, but like, playing well while hurt was one of them. Like, being Brett Favre's backup for 3 years, I never had to play well while hurt. He did. I mean, there was no one better at doing that. But until I did that myself, I really didn't know what that was going to be like. And anyway, basically, like, I think we're down in Dallas, and it's the game that Emmitt Smith breaks the NFL rushing title. That game, Trent tears his Achilles in that game. I got to go back in, and I was ready the second time around. So like, when they traded for me, I really wasn't ready. I fell on my face, and Trent was there to pick up the pieces. And when he got hurt, I went back in that game. I was ready the second time around. I worked for that opportunity, and I was a different player, and I was a lot more coachable. And it's true, we never look back, but there's no guarantee that I would have ever I really wasn't supposed to get that opportunity again. Like I even remember Mike Holmgren calling me into his office, or maybe calling me on the phone when they were going to make Trent the full-time starter. And he was like, I'm usually not wrong about quarterbacks. Like I'm almost never wrong, but maybe I was wrong about you. And I remember like, it was like the perfect thing he said to me, because instead of going in the tank, it sort of motivated me to like, oh, no, I'm going to prove to you that you weren't wrong. But no, it was tough. It was definitely tough.
There's a term in psychology that pain is leverage, and the brain's only activated by two things. It's called neuroassociative conditioning, seeking pleasure or avoidance of pain. And you're mediocre if it kind of hurts, but not too much. And it's kind of good, but not too great, right? That's mediocre, right? If you can turn up the dials in both of those, have, as Jim Rohn once said, a fuzzy future has little pull power. What do you actually want from a goal perspective? Make that really crystal clear, and then be pushed by the fear. Fear is healthy, panic is deadly sort of idea. You have to have that push-pull of both pain and pleasure. When you share that story of him telling you that on the phone, I got chills listening to you say that right now. That hurts, that's painful, and I'm not even you, right? So you have an opportunity there to get bitter or to get better, and you leaned in, and one of the coolest things about, okay, what do I want to ask, Matt? What do I want to ask, Matt? I'm really pondering and meditating on that. From the late 1990s throughout the early 2000s and beyond, you got better every year. If you're just looking at your track record, right? Setting career highs in 2007, right? So what would you point to as the contributing factors for the obvious progression as a quarterback and professional?
Well, I got to give a shout out to the NFL competition committee meetings, for they always made it harder for the defensive backs to play defensive back. And they made it harder for the pass rushers to, like, you can't hit the quarterback where you used to be able to hit the quarterback. So I'm sure the rules helped me a little bit there, Ty Law, like locking down Marvin Harrison in an AFC championship game. Like the very next year, you couldn't like touch the wide receiver after 5 yards. Like, so like there's some of that. But no, I think for me is getting back to like, I got bitter at first and then I got better. Like when I took that phone call from Mike Holmgren, I was in my house. I just bought a house in Seattle. We were renting, had a baby, had another baby, and we were moving into our house. And he calls me and says, "Hey, we're gonna make Trent Hill for the permanent starter." And I remember being there on my phone, being like, "You couldn't have told me this like before I closed on this house," like because I thought I was done in Seattle. I thought that was it. Experiment failed. You're a bust. That kind of a thing. But then my position coach was Jim Zorn, who had been the starting quarterback in Seattle for a long time. He was the original guy, and he had been through quarterback competition type stuff. And we worked and we worked and we worked and we worked. And I learned from watching Trent do it the right way. And then I got better. And then the best thing that happened to me, I would say, is that when I took Trent's job, when I became the full-time starter and I got the contract extension, and then I was, the guy, instead of getting bitter, Trent poured into me and helped me get better. And like, that was something that like, I'm forever indebted to him for that. And that's why late in my career, when I was in my 40s, I was so passionate about pouring into younger guys. And it wasn't easy for him, because like I told you, he's so competitive. Like, but he would find ways. Like he went out and talked to people like, "Hey, how am I going to get through this?" And like one of the things he did, like he's from Northern California. I'm a kid from Boston that took a train to high school every day. Not real refined, like wine drinker or anything like that. And Trent was this veteran quarterback, and he was sort of annoyed that I didn't like know a lot about wine. And so one of the things Trent would do is he would try to teach me about wine. That'd be one example of something he would try to do. Well, for every touchdown pass that I would throw, he would buy me a bottle of wine. And based on how like good of a touchdown pass it was, is how good of the bottle of wine I would get. So it's like, if I like audible because Ray Lewis is blitzing and Ed Reed's showing, and I audible to a skinny post backside, and we get it on Chris McAllister or whatever. I'm getting a bottle of like, 2008, Silver Oak or something like that. And on the bottle, he would write, "Oh, you went check 56 X seam post at a brown right." And so like I go to like the wine cellar, I'd be like, I don't know what the wine is. Oh, but I remember this play, or I go to the wine cellar and it's like, against Cleveland, 22 Texas halfback slow screen left to Sean Alexander. I'm like, oh, I remember that. I threw it like 5 yards. He ran for like 35 yards. They're like, this is just whatever, so it was something creative that he and I bonded over. It was certainly like, he's the hero. Like this is a cool thing that he's doing. And I think he got a lot of satisfaction out of, like, even though he wasn't the starting quarterback in Seattle at that time, he was pouring into me. And there was a lot of value in it. It was value for our team. He was a team leader on our team. Again, he was kind of like the captain, even though he wasn't the guy under center. And then, quite honestly, he and my dad would end up drinking all the wine themselves, after the game, But like, so it was just cool. And so, like, it was stuff like that created the quarterback room was unselfish. Like, our wives were friends. The other Brock Heward was one of the other quarterbacks there. Our wives were friends. Like, and I think our team just saw, like, it just kind of felt like as the quarterback room would go, the team would go. Like, our running backs had other positions had like competitive situations, but it was like, man, the quarterbacks are treating it like that. We can treat it like this. And like, I just think, like, if everyone on the team is unselfish, there's enough credit to kind of go around in different ways. Yeah. And that kind of stuff just helped our team, which ultimately helps the quarterback look better. I mean, ultimately. And it just helped me. It just helped me it helped me in so many ways.
And there's the pleasure, the wine coming out, right? There's an incentivized nature to that. I will say this, we're talking very positively right now, but I also want to go into what seems to be the hardest for most people, not just professional athletes. Dr. Broussard's work has a lot been inside of career transition, and it's kind of sad to know that on average, the top 5 sports, athletes have an average of 8 years to transition, and most never do. That's kind of crazy because of the narrow identity. But it also is for non-professional athletes, right? Transition is a very hard thing. There's something called a life change index where, even if you go on vacation, that increases your susceptibility to injury and illness. Why? Just because it's a change to your routine, right? The birth of a kid, the moving of houses, right? Whatever it is, changing from a relationship or job. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about transition, right? From Seattle to Tennessee and then Indianapolis and then becoming an analyst. So do you mind walking through that, maybe the highs and lows of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, going to Tennessee, I was 10 years in Seattle and we were going to finish there. I was trying to sign one more contract to just finish my career there. And the NFL lockout came, and Pete Carroll and John Schneider, my last year was their first year in Seattle. It was a great time. Like, we talked at the end of the year, I'd had a good playoff run. The Beast Quake game was our playoff game. We were a wild card team. We didn't have a great year, but we were getting better. Pete was a great coach and building a foundation. And, I think I had like 7 touchdowns and 1 interception that playoff run. Like, I wasn't healthy during the year, but like, it was like, okay, hey, when healthy with a good team around him, like, we can still play. But I was 35. So like, I understood, maybe, I get it, but we were talking about coming back. NFL lockout comes and it's just radio silence for a long time. So I was like, hey, I got like a year, maybe 2 left. I got to buckle down. I train harder than I'd ever trained. I found creative ways to train. I really had no choice. I'm doing like CrossFit. I'm actually doing SEAL Fit, like this Navy SEAL guy. Like, it was helpful to me in so many ways. And I was ready to go. Well, then the lockout lifts, like in August, I think it was. And Pete Carroll, John Schneider call me right away. And they go, hey, it's got to end sometime for everybody. We just kind of think now with this lockout, maybe this is the time to make a clean break. And they go and they sign Matt Flynn to a contract and say goodbye to me, basically break up with me. It was hard to take. Because for a lot of reasons, because I really did believe in what they were doing. And also I felt like I got a little bit of like hey, we're going to sign you back. We're going to sign you back. Maybe not. And so, but I understand it. So I go to Tennessee on a red-eye flight through Salt Lake City. The plane never shows up. It was like a nightmare experience. Show up there in Tennessee, and we're in the thick of training camp. Like training camp starts like now. And I just remember it's like a brand new playbook. Like I'd been in one language my whole career. Now I'm running this other language that was like the New York Giants playbook. And it was just like, what is going on? And that was tough. And we had just drafted, because the lockout, they had the draft. And then we went back to football. So we had just drafted the 8th pick overall, Jake Locker, to kind of be the next guy. And so there was just like it was just a lot going on. The transition was a tough thing, but I think the lessons that I learned, college, NFL, from Trent Dilfer, pouring into a young guy. I'm not competing with you. I'm competing with me, I'm helping you be your best. I want me to be my best. More is going to be caught than taught, kind of the Brett Favre thing. Just like that kind of stuff. It helped me kind of get through. And statistically, that year, I had the best year of my career statistically, ironically, and it shouldn't have been that way. Really should not have been that way. But I would just say it was like, it's just such a year of growth for me. Like that transition, although tough, in some ways was good. Like I learned a lot. Being like with a new group of people, a new coaching staff, a new way of training, new teammates, new conference, like all that stuff. There was some good stuff in there.
I will say it's really hard to learn when you're really successful in winning. There's no great story without a great problem. I mean, have you ever heard of a story like Matt was successful and he always was? It's like great story. There's nothing good there, right? But
not usually.
Kind of that chaos order, that breakdown to break through sort of mentality. I love it. You talked about.
There was, Mark, sorry to interrupt. Like one of the things that like I really struggled with, ironically, was a wristband. Like I talked earlier about like when I got in the huddle, one of the reasons that I got better as a quarterback is I made eye contact in the huddle. I had mastery of the offense. And I'd make eye contact as I would call the play for each guy. Like I would be like, hey, we got I right, we got Fox 2, X, Y hook. Okay, good sell on this. Okay, we're great. Like then all of a sudden I go to a new offense and a coach that believed in a wristband, like 3 pages of wristband, Times New Roman 8 font. And I'm sitting there and he's like, wristband 211. And I'd be like, all right, 211. And this is like literally, I'm in the huddle with my guys that I'm trying to lead. And I'm like, all right, guys, we got 0 open opposite trips, ride 136, Exxon, backs cross, like with no eye contact. And then I've ready break and I'm walking to the huddle and I'm like, this is kind of what I saw Tom Brady do when he first got to Tampa. You break the huddle, you walk to the huddle, you're in the shotgun, you're ready to go. And you're like, hold up, what did I just read? It's like when you're reading a book, you read like a page and you're like, I don't even know what I just read. I got to read it again. And like, you can do that on the wristband. And like, it's a really tough place to be as a quarterback when you're like at the line of scrimmage, you're like, red 80. Hold on. Did I say left or right? Did I say fake left? Go like it. I didn't have mastery of it. And it was like a weird thing in your mid 30s as a veteran quarterback to like struggle with. But I mean, there were some things I just struggled with. I really did.
I will say I'm happy that you cut me off because that's probably one of the most important things we could talk about in today's little back and forth is communication. Something that Versari said to me is the quality of your communication determines the quality of your life. I thought it was work ethic. I thought it was perseverance, dedication. It's communication. How so? Well, there's 4 stages of learning: ignorance, awareness, change, and then mastery. You go from Seattle to Tennessee. You go from mastery back to change. And now it's consciously competent, which means I have to think about it, then I say it, or I have to think about it, then I do it, rather than unconscious competence, like tying your shoes, right? Tiger Woods over a golf ball sort of thing, right? And when you get back to the conscious competence, there's no time to think in sport, right? Especially at the highest level. Everything comes down to speed of decision-making, speed of play. And if you're just even a half second, a quarter of a second, thinking, that really is where you get hung up. So that's really what came to mind when you talk about the change, the year of growth and all of that. You had a common language when you were at Seattle, right? And this is like best friends. You know that best friend you have, or you don't have to say anything. You just look at each other and you start laughing, right? That's unconscious competence. And you had that in Seattle. You have to go back to change, right? So not only are we talking about transition, you brought up your health, the CrossFit and SEAL training. You know what really sticks out that is far different about you than many is you played into your 40s, longevity, right? How'd you do that, right? That takes a balance of health, yeah, but also like rapport, like you've talked about already. And what would you point to there?
I mean, some of it's just good fortune. I've had one surgery in my life that was a left shoulder surgery that, quite honestly, I didn't really think I even needed. Like Drew Brees talked me into it. I went for a second opinion just because my agent was like, "Oh, just go for a second opinion." Drew Brees had the same surgery the year before in his throwing shoulder. And I talked to him while I was there, and he was like, "Do it, just do it." My shoulders never felt better. I was like, he just sounded so sure of it. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. Like that's the only surgery I had ever. And so like, I think there's probably reasons for that. Like I trained differently every year. Like I always tried to find 3 things to work at every off season. One summer I spent most of the summer in Vancouver working with a guy that mostly works with basketball and hockey players. I just did like a lot of different things, like looking for ways to get better. And quite honestly, like, was I told to have surgery many times? Yeah. There were a lot of doctors who were like, "Oh, I think you need surgery." But I didn't just go with it. Like I was kind of like, okay, well, once I have surgery, what am I going to need to do? Well, here's this aggressive rehab plan that you're going to do. I look at the rehab plan. I'm like, well, shoot, if I did that, I'd feel better anyway. So like, why don't I try that first? And let's just see where that gets me. And honestly, that's what I did a lot of the times. Like there were times where literally an MRI said, "Oh, you probably need surgery." And I got to give credit to like Mike Holmgren in that regard. Like even like when I did my shoulder surgery, they MRI'd my right shoulder. And the MRI showed, hey, you have a torn labrum in your shoulder. And I was like, "Oh, shoot, what's that mean?" And doctor's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. A lot of people have torn labrums. It's an easy fix, blah, blah, blah." So I tell Mike Holmgren I'm going to have surgery. And he's like, "Hold up. I coached Joe Montana. They told him the same thing." I think what might be happening here is that one of the things that makes you good as a thrower is that you're loose. Like your arm can do like stuff that like, not every arm can do, but that's just how God designed you. Like that's the architecture of you and your shoulder. And so let's think about that might be a possibility. And quite honestly, like, yeah, he was right. Like my arm's good. Like I literally, like I could still throw and play in the NFL throwing. It's the rest of my body that like, yeah, you can't do it. The arm isn't the thing. So like I would have just like walked into a surgery right there because like someone told me to, instead of like really asking around other doctors, coaches, PT, other people that have had the surgery. So like, I think that's part of it for me, training differently. And then, like, I don't know, taking control of my own, what's best for me in terms of rehab, or the way I think of it is prehab. Like, let me rehab for the things. And like when I got to late in my career, I did my last 3 years in Indianapolis with the Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck was one of the hardest workers I've ever been around. He was unbelievable. He would do high ankle sprain rehab all the time as if he had a high ankle sprain, but he didn't. But you know what he was never going to get? He was never going to get a bad ankle sprain. He was amazing. His like proprioception, his balance, his like all that stuff. I just remember doing it with him. I'm like, well, shoot, dude, we're never going to get hurt doing all this. Like we're like invincible. And he played that way. He played like he was invincible. In fact, his injuries ended up being like, lacerated kidney or spleen or something like that. Or, the arm stuff can be a little tricky because, you take a bad hit while throwing, there's really nothing you can do about that kind of blunt force trauma. But no, I mean, it took work, I would say. Some of it was work. Some of it was just good luck.
I will say, I don't think, I think this is a fair comment, that most society doesn't know the attention to the detail at the highest level of things, right? You go into any craft, whether it's NASCAR or pro sports or whatever it is, music, cooking, Michelin star chef, right?
Yeah.
The detail, right, that becomes unconscious is pretty amazing. Like, who knew that about it, Andrew Luck? But he's doing it, right? And he's staying healthy. How is he doing that, right? It's just like those little details. The last football question I have for you.
Can I just say one other thing? You said something that this was really, when I was playing, there used to be a thing in the NFL when you got to your 10th year, you were no longer had to do the conditioning test. It was just oh, you're a 10-year vet. You've earned the right to not do the conditioning test. You can go get on the elliptical, or you can do something on the treadmill or the bike. And that used to always bother me as a player. I was like, you're exactly the guy that needs to prove that he can still do the conditioning test. When we go out there and play on Sunday, the other team's not going to be like, oh, take it easy on him. He's a 10-year vet. That's not how it works.
True.
So one of the things that I did, the older I got, and this was more maybe because people were trying to cancel me or get me out of the league because of my age, I worked harder at the things that I running, basically. I worked harder at change of direction. I worked harder at that kind of stuff. And that ended up helping me. I remember here, even talk radio in Boston, living in Boston, they were trying to kick Brady to the curb when it was Jacoby Brissett and Garoppolo here. And I just remember watching him at training camp. I'm like, I think Tom Brady, approaching 40 years old, is quicker and faster than he was when he came out of Michigan. But he's been working at it. So basically work on your weaknesses. That is 100% true. Work on your weaknesses and find somebody that can coach you how to get better in the areas that you don't really want to get better at, that don't come easy to you. And I know that it, helped me play into my 40s and play well in my 40s.
And recovery as well? Were you doing?
That's another great one. During my career, if you look at the 18 years that I played, how we treated recovery is completely different all through it. Even now I'm doing this piece, it's going to come, I'll tell you a secret. It's a secret, but I'm doing a piece on arm care, quarterbacks in the NFL, how this has changed. First, we did ice bags and ice cups and game ready, then this, then that, cold tub, all this stuff. The Kansas City Chiefs, I think they're the team that their quarterbacks look like they throw the ball the best late in the year. Patrick Mahomes is an example of this. They don't even ice their arms anymore. They don't ice their arms. They do a sort of a prehab. They do a quarterback shoulder school workout type thing where they elongate, they strengthen, they're more pliable, kind of a Brady thing. Recovery is a thing. I got away from cold tubs. If it wasn't a heat thing, I got away from cold tubs late in my year and went to a compression kind of recovery mode. And then in nutrition and what you eat and when you eat, and maybe you need a little bit of supplementation and, some of that kind of stuff for recovery, sleep, I had a strength coach late in my career. You start the meeting out, I'd be like, listen, don't talk to me about supplements until you come and talk to me first about sleep. And then once you're doing your sleep right, we can talk about supplements. And I think it's both, but it's just, that was never talked about when I first entered the NFL. When I first entered the NFL, you fly home from a game, there'd be 2 Miller Lights on in a hamburger on your seat on the airplane. That was what it was. That was what it used to be like. When my dad played in the NFL, water breaks were seen as a sign of weakness. Oh, you're a wuss if you get water breaks. You're now it's just so different. So I think understanding how recovery goes is also a huge component of success.
I will say, and I'm not promoting this, I heard of it. So now I'm meditating on it, whether it's the right way to go about it. My buddy was listening to a Stanford professor talk about hot and cold therapy. And, when you got hurt growing up, it was oh, ice it. Oh, ice that. You got hurt, ice that. And really what he was told, and he's an Ironman athlete at the highest level, is unless you're going to use the body again in the next 48 hours, don't ice it. Allow it to go through the inflammation and get more blood flowing there through heat, which I thought was just fascinating because it does make you feel better when you ice it, right? But it actually delays recovery. And it's just a mind-blowing thing for what you're always taught, right? The dogma of the last decades. And that arm care piece seems really fascinating in terms of what's going to come of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in 10 years from now, it'll be something else too, maybe, they'll know more.
100%. But the last question I had on football was more about an intangible perspective. Something that I dive deep into from the performance psychology front is belief, identity, and purpose. So, every single time having that conviction when you go out there that you can do, the story that you tell yourself. The next thing is the identity. Who do you actually see yourself, right? For Beyonce, her stage name is Sasha, right? When she goes out there, right? Kobe Bryant is the Black Mamba, this identity that when they become that, they really go there. And then purpose. What is your why? What drove you? Do you mind answering any of that? Can you talk about any of the belief or identity that you had or the purpose of why you played, especially as the years went on?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot I could say. I think for me, playing quarterback in the NFL, first of all, I think what helped me get to where I got to was just trying to be the best that I could be, just trying to be my best all the time in everything. In our quarterback room in Seattle, we had a saying that I think was a Bill Walsh saying. It was something like this. It was said, just do everything right and the score will take care of itself. And in everything, run game, pass protection, just do everything right and the score will take care of itself. So just trying to be the best that you could be. But a lot of pressure comes with playing quarterback in the NFL. And I think for me, my favorite moment or the favorite thing that I like to talk about or the picture that I can give you is when you're in the tunnel and you're about to run out into the field. And the closest thing that I can equate it to is the movie Gladiator, when Russell Crowe's in the dungeon with his guys and he's about to go out to battle, and you can kind of hear the crowd outside. It's literally thousands of people. And for us, it's millions of people watching, and there's coaches whose jobs are on the line and our families who are counting on us. And, everyone's counting on us. And it's like this moment of anxiousness or nerves or whatever. When you're sitting in there with your guys and you go out in position groups usually. So sometimes it's quarterbacks and receivers, or maybe it's just quarterbacks and centers or quarterbacks, but you're in that dark, dreary, tunnel. And these NFL stadiums, they're beautiful stadiums, but the locker rooms, they're kind of more like the Gladiator locker rooms sometimes. And I just remember being in there. We would always say a prayer before we would come out. And, I don't know what people think. I don't know if they think the prayer is oh God, I hope you help us win today or something like that. That's never really the prayer. The prayer is usually something hey God, we have given it everything this week. We have worked our tails off to make the most of our God-given ability. We pray today that you would, we would not worry about all these people or all the pressure. We pray that we would glorify you with doing the best with the ability that you've given us. And that's it. The scoreboard will take care of itself. To me, that was always very freeing to know hey, I put in the work. We're here together. We're coming humbly before you and saying we pray that there's no serious injury for us or for them. And we're just going to go out there and just cut it loose and have fun like we did when we were kids, and trust your training, not play scared, not drive the car like you're 10-2 driver's ed. Drive the car hey, man, this is my car. These are my roads. I know where I'm going. I know how I'm doing it. Cut it loose, have fun, windows down, stereo on 11. Let's go. And that was always for me, win, lose, or tie, whatever. It almost didn't matter because the scoreboard was sort of a liar. I can't affect how the defense does, special teams.
Sure.
It was more you know what? Did I play courageously with grit and toughness and passion and energy and, make the most of the God-given ability that I've been blessed with? And if the answer is yes, that's it. What else do you want me to do?
Right. I two things there. People lose that inside of peak performance is playfulness, right? Umpire doesn't say work ball, he says play ball. And it's really important to keep that relaxed focus, right? It's very hard, right? But in lacrosse, that's gripping the stick too tight. That's being intense and tense, right? You have to find a way to be calm in an uncalm place. You brought up Gladiator and something that I've been pondering about, and I want to use this platform to say this right now. What's so amazing about Gladiator and those things Lord of the Rings is the messianic nature of it. You're going out there and there's going to be a hero and somebody's going to win something. And that's what we look at. We look at the hero and the role model. And that's what you were for many people, especially in Seattle. 1-day contract in Seattle there, Matt. That's where you retired there. What was it about that organization?
Well, it wasn't always easy there. Like that was one of the things. Like that was a team that had huge success. The Kingdom days. Like they literally used to throw a flag on the home team because their crowd was too loud. Like they had like major success. But when I got there, I was coming from the Green Bay Packers, who like you'd walk in every day, you'd walk by a bunch of Lombardi trophies, and they were coming off of 2 consecutive Super Bowls when I got there. And so when I walked into Seattle, that wasn't the case. Like it was a rebuild situation. But we eventually created something very, very special there. I think the fact that it was hard early on made the mountaintop kind of experience that much more meaningful. And honestly, like just the way the fans were a part of victories for me was a major thing. Like they call them the 12s. But like I remember playing the New York Giants, and I think the New York Giants literally jumped off sides 11 times in one game. Like that's not because it wasn't because of us. It wasn't because of our game plan. That's because our crowd took so much pride in the fact that they were in this with us. And that just feeds on energy. They're feeding off of the energy that we put out there. We're feeding off of the energy that they're putting out there. Like we literally were teammates and partners in the whole thing. So like in that New York Giants game that I'm talking about, the hero of the game was our fans. In fact, I think Mike Holmgren actually gave them a game ball, like painted it up and everything. Like this goes to our fans, NFL record. But that was created through hard work. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't get booed out of Husky Stadium my first year there. I did, like literally booed out of the stadium. Like had a dinner reservation that night after the game, canceled it because I was so embarrassed about how I played, how it went. Like it wasn't always great, but it eventually became something really special that we're all very, very proud of.
Matt, I just love the fact that you throughout this entire talk, you're bringing up these hardships, because that's really what people care about. That's where they can really relate to. I know we're in fourth quarter and overtime here. I just have a few more. As successful as you were as a quarterback, you're a true man of faith and loyal to your family. How were you able to handle those responsibilities as a quarterback in the NFL? And what's it like now?
So I think it was easier when I was playing in the NFL than it is now. I mean, you have such a sense of community in a locker room and so much structure. For us on really every team that I was on, there's always a chapel before the game. Like you didn't have to like decide like, oh, I'm going to get in the car, dress up and go to church. Like church was literally right there, the meeting before the special teams meeting. We'd always have a team Bible study. We always had a team chaplain. We had a team like couples study with players and their spouses or players and their girlfriends. Like it was kind of like, it would have been easier to go than to skip out on it. It was just kind of the nature of being in the NFL. And there's just an accountability when like you're in a locker room and literally like, here's my chair, there's your chair, another chair, like all your guys are like right with you all the time. You can't like fake it. Then you get out of the NFL and it's just like a totally different thing. You might see your neighbors when you get the mail together. Like you connect with people over like, double tapping a like on an Instagram post. It's very easy to like see people. You run into somebody at a sporting event or whatever and be like, how you doing? Like, good. What's up with you? What's up? Like just casual versus like being plugged into like a chapel program or a Bible study or like whatever devotionals, or maybe you're reading through the same book with your teammates. And all of a sudden on a long flight back from, Miami or Detroit or the Jets game or whatever, like you're sitting there on the plane and it's all your buddies and the seatbelt sign's never on for a charter plane, so like you're just walking around and you're like, hey, did you read that thing the other day? Like, what'd you think about that? Just like deep
Amazing.
Conversation.
Amazing.
And I just don't think you get it. Like I retired because I was 41 years old, my first year out. And I don't know any other 41-year-olds that are retired. Like my first year out, the person I spent the most time to talking in person was my neighbor in his 90s. Like it just was a completely different, and that was rare. So it's just like a completely different situation than being plugged into a team. And I think even just like for me, faith is really important. It's been a journey for me. And now I'm at a part of my life where like faith is extremely important to me. What I realized is that when I was in locker rooms and I was on teams and sports, prayer is very welcome. Prayer is everywhere. Like I mentioned, we pray in the tunnel. We pray in the locker room. We pray in the shower before we pray in the locker room. We pray after every game. And like, it's just not the case that like, I work at ESPN now, like before we do Sports Center, like we're not huddling up, holding hands, being like, all right, let's pray. Like, it's just not the norm. It's not the vibe of how it goes. Maybe it should be, I don't know, but like, it's just a different experience. So a lot of times the question I get is like, oh, how hard was it to live out your faith as a professional athlete, as a quarterback in the NFL? It's like, probably easier than everyone else, like truly and honestly. Like I grew the most through adversity and studying and just training and being coached and learning and asking tough questions. It was really, really good for me.
I will say, what resonates in the last two answers from the 12s to that one is having a community and being plugged into them. I think that's kind of the hard thing. You talked about the double tapping on Instagram. There's no community there. That's kind of wild, wild west. So you got to find where you belong. And then the other side is carry a worthwhile weight, right? Your responsibility, carry your own cross sort of thing. When do people pray? Usually when there's consistency day to day and when something's on the line, right? And you got to find for what you're putting on the line. Last few questions. What about your professional career have you taken to your work as an analyst? Is there crossover there or not so much?
I think the biggest thing is just understanding like the teamwork aspect of it, whether it's like calling a game or doing a pregame show. There's so many people that go into the success of a game plan on a football, like people see the quarterback and they see the receiver that caught the touchdown, but rarely after a touchdown pass are they like panning the camera right back to the left guard and the center and the right guard. Like they're just not. But like that quarterback was never going to throw that touchdown if it wasn't for those guys. And almost never are they panning to the coaching staff, like especially the assistant coaches who slept on the couch Monday night and Tuesday night or poured through 11 hours of film so that the quarterback could pour through 4 hours of film or 2 hours of film. Like they're not showing those guys. And I think that's the same thing. Like, I work on Sunday NFL Countdown on ESPN with Randy Moss, Teddy Bruschi, Rex Ryan, Samantha Ponder, Adam Schefter, people like that, Chris Mortensen. But I also work on that show with Jacob Neerob, Matthew Garrett, Chad Minutillo, Evan Kaplan. Like there are people who grind on that show that won't get in front of the camera. You won't hear their name. They're not going to get to do You Got Mossed. They're not going to get to do Come On Man. They're not going to get to do that stuff. And I promise you, like some of them know more football than we do. Like some of them are the stars of the show. And I just think that that's understanding that just because you're the person that gets your picture in the paper or whatever, doesn't mean you're more important than the guy who blocked for you or, the girl who produced the show or, or whatever. And so like, I really believe that with my whole heart, like absolutely. And I think that's just a valuable thing that I know is true from my time in the NFL.
When you look back now at your age, what is something that I know you brought up a few of them, but what really shines forth as something that now that you wish you knew right early in your career?
Think if I was looking back, one of the things is not understanding the power that I had to communicate with my coaches or bosses. Like if I didn't like a play in the game plan or if I didn't like something, I was pretty good. I thought I was doing a good job if I didn't trash talk the idea. Like if we were on the lunch table and someone said, hey, what do you think about that new play action we put in? I thought I was like patting myself on the back for not being like, oh, I think it's stupid. It's never going to work if the middle linebacker does an inside run through. Like I thought I was doing a good job if I just stayed positive. But what I really wish I would have done is I wish I would have, at the appropriate time, gone to my coaches one-on-one, door shut, and said, hey, I see what you're trying to do. I like the idea, but are you at all concerned about like the inside backer running through? Like that could be an issue here. Like, and it's like speaking up in the appropriate way. So like, I just thought it was good to not go from complaining to like, hey, I'm Pollyanna, but like just really taking a little bit more ownership. Because they want what I want. And I have a perspective that they don't have, and they have a perspective that I don't have. And hey, if the answer is like, yeah, we thought about that, we're okay with that risk, then fine. That's the answer.
Amazing.
But I think that's an area that I could have done a much better job at. And I wish I had.
There's two things that come to mind there. Is if you want a better life, ask better questions. And I think that's what you're talking about, with both to ourselves and to the coaches and to the bosses. But also there's this aspect of it where, there's some things that you didn't know that now you know, and there's growth in that. I think it's really hard to see your relationship with those coaches and bosses, especially early on, but you found that way. Negativity works negatively 100% of the time. Positivity doesn't always work, but you were neutral about those things. Last question is, how do you define greatness? You've been around such amazing talent, such amazing teammates and coaches and people that are obsessed with their craft and amazing at their crafts. How would you define greatness, Matt?
Oh, I probably need more time to define it, but it's funny, you know it when you see it, right? And, I'll just say I've had some teammates that were great teammates, and that didn't always mean they were the highest paid player on the team or they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. There's just some guys that I think they maximize their God-given ability. And to me, that's all any player should really ask for or shoot for. I don't know why I've got this image of one of my teammates, this kid named Justin Forsett. We were teammates in Seattle. He was probably like a 7th round pick out of Cal. He was an incredible teammate. And I remember my last game with the Seahawks, playing a playoff game in the snow in Chicago. It's a divisional round and the clock's ticking down. And I remember going over to him and I was looking for somebody on the sideline to say something to. And I saw him and I was like, hey man, I just want you to know, you are probably one of the greatest teammates I've ever had. And I've had great teammates and I've had great players that were teammates. And I think the reason that I said it, that year, he was our starting running back. We traded for Marshawn Lynch to be our starting running back. Marshawn, that was like mid-October. Marshawn never would have been able to get up to speed quick enough to be our starting running back, our first and second down back, if it wasn't for the help of Justin Forsett, who was his teammate at Cal. If Justin Forsett hadn't been humble, unselfish, and willing to basically help train Marshawn to take over that job immediately. Immediately. And Marshawn Lynch's first game with us was actually in Chicago. So I think the fact that we were ending that same year in Chicago, just like it was fresh on my mind. And here's a guy, Justin Forsett, not the biggest guy, doesn't have the fastest 40. In fact, he's always the smallest guy, doesn't have the fastest 40, always counted out. But you know what? That dude was an impact player. He was great. He was great at being a tailback. He was great at being a teammate. And he was great at being a leader. And again, the way he led that year on our team was that he helped train Marshawn to be the guy that had the Beastquake game in our second to last game of the year in that playoff game against the Saints. That was the year. And that was Justin Forsett's. He was the guy. He was our starting tailback. And to me, that was great. That was greatness. And it allowed, in a way, Marshawn to have what I believe is the greatest run in NFL history.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But credit, there's enough credit to go around. Marshawn had a great run. We had linemen all the way down in the end zone. There was a lot that went into it. But part of what went into it was our backup running back's willingness to help his teammate be great and to accomplish greatness.
The full circle on humility. It's so humble to hear him about that. Matt,
those of us who know, and Mark, those of us who know, we know. The world might sit out there and be like, oh yeah, Marshawn Lynch, greatest run of all time. Yes, he did it almost single-handedly. He did it, but he never would have been in position to do it, I don't think, had people like Justin Forsett not said, hey, you know what? Let's go. What's best for the team? I'll make third down my thing. And there's actually a touchdown pass in that game to Mike Williams. Sorry, where they doubled Justin Forsett. They doubled Justin Forsett. They double him because the ball was supposed to go there. It was like, oh shoot, they doubled Forsett. Woo, bombs away to Mike Williams. But it's only because the ball wasn't supposed to go to Mike Williams. It was supposed to go to Justin Forsett. Like once again, I don't know. Sorry.
No, the reason I started this podcast is the story inside the story, right? Everybody sees this, right? Everybody sees this, but how did it happen, right? What were the influences? What was he grateful for? Who did it? Who influenced and impacted that journey? Is there anything that you wish I asked that I didn't, Matt?
I feel good. This was like I just got some stuff off my chest. I don't think I've ever even told that story about Justin Forsett. If Justin Forsett ever hears this, he's gonna be like, "What? Wow, I'm shocked to hear this."
Amazing. So you're on ESPN. Listeners can easily see you there. But where can they also go to learn more about what you're doing off the air?
Well, I coach quarterbacks at Zavarian Brothers High School where I went. My son is a 2024 quarterback there. Had a lot of fun coaching him this year. It was his first year being the starting quarterback. So that's like my day job, if you will, probably my most important job. But yeah, I do the kind of the pregame show from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sunday morning before all the biggest games. We have an awesome show. I love the people that I work with. We work really, really hard on that show. I think we do a really good job. And then what I do also is I'll go and I'll interview quarterbacks and head coaches in kind of a non-knee to knee situation, like something unique, maybe on the field. I try to give you a ticket to something you could never buy a ticket to, and do stuff like really creatively with quarterbacks. So got some good ideas for this offseason. We'll tape them this offseason, we'll can them, and then we'll break them out for the season. We have already done one. I don't know if I should tell you what it is, but I'll give you a little sneak peek. It's about the greatness of Andy Reid as a head coach and why his assistant coaches go on to have so much success and go on to coach in Super Bowls and win Super Bowls, his assistant coaches. And it's kind of a little round table, a little bit of a roast on Andy Reid, but also you can see why guys like John Harbaugh and Doug Peterson and others have gone on to have success. Sean McDermott's a guy that's knocking at the door. There's others. So yeah, I think it's something I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping that one runs week 1.
Well, I'll tell you, Matt, one third of Nobel Prize winners had mentors who were Nobel Prize winners. So you telling that story about Andy Reid is pretty amazing. And, full circle, hero's journey. From the first question I asked you, you bring it up. That was just normal for me. I'm hoping people listen to this podcast and they look for those not so normal, but become normal situations where they're hanging out with people that are as humble, that are as tough, they're as passionate, as energized, as loving, faith-filled in what they're doing. I think if you could find a community like the 12s in your own life, it's going to be exceptional. Matt, I really want to thank you for our growing relationship, but your time, your honesty, your vulnerability here. It was a privilege.
You're the man, Mark. Appreciate it. It was good.